Peter Boghossian, welcome once again back to Dad Saves America.
It's an honor. Thanks, John.
So, you were one of the first calls I made after hearing about what happened to Charlie Kirk. And one of the reasons for that is because you are out there in the streets and have been for a long time, engaging in a kind of radical discourse, your street epistemology. And so you're putting yourself out there to be in the name of trying to engage people on ideas that make them uncomfortable. And, well, where is your head at right now as we sit here, a week later?
So I was devastated when Charlie died. I was equally devastated by the glee that followed his death. Yeah. We're a deeply divided country. Again, the core of the whole problem is that people are not talking about issues. That's the core of the whole thing. I mean, we can talk about the source of it. The source of it is the academy and the media, et cetera, and what's downstream of the academy. But the genuine cause is that everyone views everybody else as an existential threat, and they're not willing to have conversations with people with whom they disagree. That's the core of the problem.
If you're trying to be reasonable, right, and you're trying to say, I'm not gonna let my reptile mind take over.
Yeah.
You try to be ecumenical or something and say it's not just partisan. But there is this YouGov study that came out last week that points to this. And did you get a chance to look at this? I've got it kind of off to the side. So specifically, I'm scrolling through it here. Most Americans say political violence is never justified. This is very much 72% of all U.S. adults say it's never justified.
Yeah, look at the age. When you get more granular on the age, look what happens.
Yeah, but on political ideology, the group that says, yes, violence can sometimes be justified are those who say they're very liberal, and it's 25%. So that's 1 in 4 people that were surveyed who self-describe themselves as very liberal, say, yes, violence can be justified politically. If you go to the other side of that, very conservative, self-identified, it's 3%. So that's 3 out of 100 people instead of 1 in 4. And basically, it's like this almost very linear sliding scale as you move from very liberal to moderate to conservative to very conservative. The tolerance for violence and the other question that was asked was sort of like, is it okay to be happy about it? Looks very similar. Why is that? I mean, why do you think that is? What is that?
Yeah, I think that's the wrong question to ask. I think that's been overdiagnosed. I think the right question is, what do we do about it? And
well, let's for the sake
within that answer is contained why is that?
Okay.
So the bottom line answer for why is there, and I'll answer the question directly, is it's the university system. It's the K through 12 accreditation process that people receive who want to be teachers in the colleges of education. And it's the indoctrination mill we've set up in the academies. That people go to the academies. We know they become more liberal, especially when they're younger. They have those natural ideological propensities. They see people they respect who are. We know the data from FIRE and other sources, overwhelmingly liberal, self-identified conservatives. Some Ivy League campuses are only 1%. I'm actually shocked it's 1%. So we know the source of it. We know everything that's downstream from it. All the media, or certainly all the legacy media, take people who have degrees from institutions, other legacy institutions. So the legacy media take people who have degrees from legacy academic institutions, and they've all been brainwashed with this utter madness. So that's simplistic, but that's what it is. That's the situation in which we find ourselves. Our engines of knowledge production are completely corrupt. I've been talking about this for decades. Nobody seems to want to do anything about it. It is what it is.
All right, real quick. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see more, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. It lets YouTube know that you want to see more Dad Saves America, and it helps spread the word. So it's one of the best things you can do to support what we're doing. And now, back to the show. So in our last conversation and elsewhere, and you guys put up a montage of you saying we should burn down the university system, start over, build new stuff, but burn this existing infrastructure down.
Correct. That's one of the solutions, to burn it down.
Where has all of this challenged your sense of what free speech is the most? Because it is challenged. There's a game theoretic thing going on here where the people willing to run the table on these institutions did it and won. And those willing to be high-minded about freedom of speech, we face something asymmetrical. I don't have this worked out in my head what's wrong, but something's wrong. Something's not like fighting fair or something that we got to this place. So how do you think about that? Like, if we agree on the sort of source, like how we got here is really hard for me to get my head around. I don't know the answer.
So how we got here in terms of free speech is that we indoctrinated a generation of kids into thinking that the other side of the political aisle are existential threats and ideological enemies, and you don't talk to Nazis, you punch Nazis. And of course, that the inevitability was that would escalate to shooting Nazis. We know exactly how we got here. Why we allowed this to get here is another problem entirely.
Well, and how maybe this helps me think about how to ask you the question better, which is, we allowed this to happen, allowed our academic institutions to become essentially like woke psychopathic madrasas.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
But there is a school of thought that says, well, academic freedom and tenure, and it's okay to have a crazy radical professor that calls themselves an activist and sees themselves as being a social justice warrior, as opposed to an educator of trying to pursue truth. That there is no such thing as truth, and we subsidize that. So,
well, I was up with you until the very end of there is no such thing as truth. And I buy in large part that argument. I do think that there should be a Marxist in every economics faculty. A believing Marxist, not just a Marxist. I do think that there should be a range of people in psychology departments, behaviorists, et cetera. But the problem is that the entire institution, the architecture of the institution, was changed to become an indoctrination factory. That's what it is. It's an ideology mill to replicate what that dominant ideology is. And in the case of all of the studies, those intro programs, even that engineers, I often read online, engineering schools are immune from the STEM fields, but even they have to go through an introductory course sequence. And a lot of that stuff is queer theory. I don't like the word Marxism. People don't understand what it means. They have a knee-jerk reaction to it, but it's indoctrinating them into the idea that there's something inherently wrong with Western systems and institutions. They happen to be right, but for the wrong reasons. There is something intrinsically wrong with the system because the system is teaching them that there's something intrinsically wrong with the system. Kind of like a little meta variable there. So we have this idea that architecture in systems should be dismantled and disrupted. Racism is the ordinary and everyday state of affairs. Again, I've been talking about this stuff for years. Nobody seems to want to change anything. The peer-reviewed journal system is utterly corrupt. Nobody wants to do anything about that. Nobody really, there's such an inertia and there's so much money in the system, nobody wants to really do anything about it.
But if we were like, I think one way we can have a different conversation is to try to break down the specifics here, in the sense that, okay, let me put forward an idea.
Okay.
And the idea is, fire these people, fire them all. Have a criteria which says if you are demonstrably an activist for the destruction of the West, you're fired.
I can stop you already. That's not possible. They have tenure. They have jobs for life. So what's your next solution?
Change the law to eliminate tenure and then proceed back to step one.
Okay, so that'll buy you, I don't know, that'll slow it down a little bit, but in what is that going to be, 15 years, 10 years? Too late. What's your next solution?
Well, this is the problem. It's like, so the one that I like, you and I are both friends and fans and connected, you more so than me, to the University of Austin here.
Right.
And so obviously building new things.
You're
But
right. That is sorry to interrupt, that is a solution to the problem. 100% correct. University of Austin currently has, what, 200 people?
Right.
We're talking about institutions, even a mid-tier institution, we're talking about 30, 40,000 at a state school.
So let's talk about the
But
state
you're right.
schools.
But you're right. That's a solution for sure. Build new things.
But
and remove the regulatory apparatus that puts up blocks. It's like a accreditation cartel, so that more universities can spring up, more people can have choices. But again, that's 10 years.
So lay out for me some stuff that because burn the system down, doesn't leave me much of a roadmap as an advocate for positive change. So let's like, well, I mean, seriously.
Well, it's interesting. My dad was a civil engineer, and I asked him once, what's the best way to take pollution out of a stream? He said, oh, that's easy. Stop polluting the stream. Find the source of the pollution and take it out. This exact same thing is the case with the university system, the whole university system. So Claudine Gay was a plagiarist. I've argued for years she shouldn't have been fired. She should have been exalted in that position. We need someone who was, no, it really is. That I'm being very sincere when I tell you that. I think that's what we need to do. Look, you're a Catholic, right?
Yep.
So let's say that somebody wanted to delegitimize the entire church and throw it into chaos, and so the best way to do that would be to keep pedophiles there, particularly if the Pope was a pedophile found with child pornography. That would be the single best way to delegitimize the Catholic Church. So why wouldn't we want the same thing for our institutions, for our academic institutions? These places are enemies of the West. They poison young minds. They openly advocate the destruction of the society. This guy, George Abena, I can't even pronounce his last name, the Oxford Union president, is a great example of that. He LOL'd and glorified in the murder of Charlie Kirk. He is an African of African descent, so it makes it particularly difficult to remove him from his position as the president of Oxford University. The Oxford Debating Society, the most prestigious debating society in the world. And I've argued repeatedly he should be kept in his position and exalted.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar, Charlie debated this man at the Oxford Union in London.
Correct.
I mean, the picture says a lot, right? I mean, from a decorum standpoint, Charlie's sitting there nicely kept in a suit. This guy looks like he rolled out of bed 5 minutes before it started in sweatpants.
Sweatpants, yep.
And that's all intentional. That's all part of the disruption.
Disrupt and dismantle.
Thing. Why keep him in? This is a different kind of long game. Play this out for me.
Okay, so think about the stream and the pollution in the stream. If you want to clean up the society, you have to stop the pollution from going in the stream. The first order of business is people need to understand what is being taught in the university system. When I see those polls, the percentage of people who trust what comes out of the university, I'm always flabbergasted that conservatives, libertarians, anyone trust. I'm always flabbergasted when it's like, 10, 15%. Those people have no idea what's going on in the university system. Like literally no idea. The entire system, John, all of it is an ideology mill. That's what the purpose, the raison d'etre of the institution is, to teach kids that the system under which they're living is ableist, homophobic, racist, patriarchal, etc. And they must work to actively dismantle this. They must become allies in the system. So how do we delegitimize a system that teaches people that? Well, we keep corrupt figures in positions of authority and we exalt them. There is no better way to destroy the system. And my position has been consistent on this, even pre-Claudine Gay. I've argued repeatedly that Claudine Gay should be kept in her position. She even plagiarized the acknowledgments in her dissertation. She's a public disgrace. She's truly a public disgrace. And she's the perfect person to lead an ideological cesspool. So she should be kept in because people should know it's it's isomorphic. It's perfect. People should know exactly what the institution does. They're corrupt, and she's a figurehead of corruption.
The
This is really not that radical of an idea.
Sure. I think the thing I'm going to throw out throw out an admission of hypocrisy. And that mission of hypocrisy is this. I advocate for and have pull your kids out of these institutions.
Absolutely, 100%.
And I did that with my son in K through 12. I walked that walk. And he graduated. Last year, we sent him to Italy for a year, and he was nominally, he was enrolled in a school there, a little liberal arts school in Rome. He's since come back, and he is currently enrolled in a school, in a university. So I'm sort of a hypocrite because my son is in a university here in town. It's not UATX. I won't say what it is because there's creeps out there that want to do bad stuff to all of us. But so as a parent, this is this thing that's so hard that I am personally grappling with. Like, I am doing the thing that I said I shouldn't do and that I won't do. And the question is why? Why am I doing that? And
I think I have an answer for you. It's because I think you've hierarchically prioritized different values. The values you've chosen are your son's autonomy. So you let your son decide. So you have an idea that you don't like the institutions that teach dangerous, divisive, toxic, racist, poisonous nonsense. I don't like those either. But your top priority is that your son's autonomy and happiness, and you let him decide for himself. Is that correct?
It's not entirely correct. It's not wrong. I do have a tendency for that. And Catherine Burblesing, who's a mutual friend of ours,
she's amazing. Love that woman.
She's everyone that's watching this, tee up my interview with Catherine. She
and
beats
mine.
Me up.
Ours. We have multiple. She's amazing. Yeah,
she's
amazing.
The greatest. So here's what I've experienced in the past year. In December, he comes back from his first semester, and I'm having a conversation with him about how it's going. And he's like, it's really interesting, Pop. Like, all the girls are super woke and kind of crazy and think they're in some gender fluid thing. And all the boys are super based, and all of my roommates, all like 7 of my roommates, are all basically like on a spectrum of the right wing. And he's like, I find myself sounding more like you every day. And so when he came back last summer, it became pretty clear to me that I have succeeded in inoculating him.
Great.
So that's pretty awesome. And so
that is awesome. That's fantastic.
So I am optimizing in a sense for other things, in that I want to see him mature. I want some of these other skills that come about from just making your way to being 25 years old, especially as a man, as a young man, that like there's different ways you could do it, but I do want him to get better at speaking and writing and communicating. And so this is sort of it feels like this is not the worst thing he can be doing, and it gives some structure to that. And if I said, well, just go work in a trade right now, for him, he doesn't want to do that. So, and he likes politics and political science and philosophy. So I could be like, well, just do Khan Academy or do Peterson Academy. That's fine, but it's not the same. So, I'm grappling with this in real time right here with you, because it's like,
we both are.
So where does that leave me then? Like, so I'm trying, like, so he's in this imperfect situation that he's doing okay in, and he's 20.
Oh, he's doing exactly what he should be doing. I don't see a conundrum. I think you're being a responsible father. And if you weren't, I would tell you in a heartbeat. That's what friendship is. I think that I don't know your son. Unfortunately, I've never met him. But I will say what I see as a potential problem is AI is outsourcing so many jobs for when he gets out.
Yeah.
And so many of these kids, they simply cannot find jobs. You mentioned vocation. I'm a big believer, big fan of vocational education. I'm in a similar situation that with you because of my daughter. I pretty much beseeched my daughter not to go to college. She made the decision to go. I told her I'd pay for her to be an electrician. So she's smaller, so electrician, she's carpenter. You have to kind of be big with hammers and stuff. But if your son, if that vocational route post college is not an option, I'm a big believer in vacation. Set your own schedule, make good money.
Yeah, it's
Just a job security is phenomenal.
It's maybe he'll end up there. He's not especially handy, so he might not be well suited to it. It's really hard to say. We've got this. It's I don't want to make this all about me in this conversation, but I'm trying to be an exemplar for the challenge I think we all face as parents when we're looking at this stuff and when we think about okay, what do we do practically, individually?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I think that you probably had open dialogue at your dinner table and conversation
every night.
So I'll share something with you. So both my kids are gay, and my daughter was during COVID in the lockdowns on TikTok, on social media, etc. And there was a period there, where she was watching these videos where she was told, "You're not really gay, you're a boy," etc. And I love the word that you used was inoculate. So I got lucky in that the kids that I have, obviously, my daughter's adopted, my son is my biological son, but that could have gone south very, very quickly. And so I think part of it is taking a role in your kids' lives, but not taking a role in terms of being the person who listens and is open. And when you have those conversations at the dinner table, mirroring, I'm willing to revise my mind, like modeling those behaviors for your kids. But I do think that the landscape, specifically the economic landscape, is going to change dramatically. It's already changing. I think it's going to change very dramatically within the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because this week, we're sitting here. It's Friday, and this will go up next Thursday. So for those of you watching right now, last week, we had a whole bunch of stuff all happen at once, right? So we've got this Jimmy Kimmel thing. Where he's
we should talk
ousted,
about that. Yeah,
we should. Well, I'm teeing us up for a couple things to talk about that are connected. But one of the ones that slipped a little under the radar because of Jimmy Kimmel and everything that surrounds poor Charlie is the fact that TikTok appears to be on track to be relaunched here in the States under the ownership of this consortium of Trump-allied big tech players led by Larry Ellison. With the U.S. government in some way at the table, President Trump said it's like I got a deal plus. It's like insinuating it's like another one of these very weird deals.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start there because it's like, I don't like that. It's like, let's not let China propagandize our kids. We'll propagandize them ourselves, or we'll spy on them ourselves. We're in really weird waters on this front. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've interviewed people on the show who've talked about that explicitly. TikTok has human censors, and the same content it's basically an arm. All Chinese companies are arms of the Chinese government, the CCP. And so the content that's allowed in this country would never be allowed in China. And so it's specifically set up to be dangerous and divisive. It kind of reminds me of something my buddy Faisal Al-Mukhtar said when Putin endorsed Harris for president. It's not who he wants to be president. It's what's going to cause the most chaos possible, what's going to sow the most dissent possible, what's going to create the most divisiveness possible. And TikTok is an exemplar of that.
It's another example of this sort of free speech battle getting so much more complex than it used to be, right? I mean, what's the free speech angle on his? I mean, obviously keep the government out, but given the scope of these companies, they play a role.
This is interesting. So I just have to say this. I fold my arms not because I'm defensive. My shoulders killing me all the time. But so this is interesting. So people have reported on Charlie Kirk, and they've said false things about him, like what he said about black women, et cetera.
Yeah.
And they've been reporters on legacy and non-legacy media. Now, if we had a sane society, we could have a civil conversation about whether or not they should be fired. What are the limits of cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel, et cetera. But we don't have a sane society. No, very few people, if anyone, are capable of talking to each other. The fact is that this is, I'll borrow your word from before, an asymmetrical problem. We have people on the left who simply will not talk. Finally, Bill Maher and others have woken up to that. But we have people on the left who simply will not talk to you. We've been trying to get an Islamic apologist on our show for I don't know how long, and they canceled again today. There are other people who won't come on the show or come on people's shows and have discourse. And so you have a problem that you can't solve your problems. No problem is going to solve itself. And so,
Yeah.
so here's the way I'm too thinking out loud for this. In one sense, like when I grew up and you grew up, there was ABC, CBS, NBC, and my dad used to always watch 60 Minutes. He loved the show, 60 Minutes. In that case, if somebody, and again, I'm just thinking out loud here, if somebody put out a piece of information that was incorrect, and I'm thinking of Charlie Kirk assassination in this case, it seems to me clear that person should be fired because of the integrity of the station, and there weren't any other options. But today there are so many options. But I think what's really important to understand is how people consume news. They don't go to news outlets they disagree with. They go to news outlets to learn the news, to confirm their own political biases and opinions. That's why they choose those complete rags. Should have asked about swearing, but
We can
Slate,
bleep it. It's fine.
yeah, about Slate, Salon, Reddit. Reddit is an interminable cesspool. It is the whole thing is Slate and Salon are probably topping the list. So you go and you read those because you want your biases confirmed, not because you want to learn anything about the world. So then we're in a question. So if somebody puts out a false piece of information, should they be fired from their job? Well, I'm of two minds about this. No, because the point of the institution isn't to capture the truth in language and put it out there. It's to sway and make people feel good about their own political intuitions. But in another sense, like all of NPR, that's what it is. It's the whole thing is disinformation. So it's not like you can point to any one thing. I mean, every story, just about every story, it's all. So you know what I do? I'll share a little secret with you. Sometimes before I go to bed, maybe 2/3 of the night, I'll go to Google News and I'll just flip and I'll just look at the headlines and I'll try to guess just from the headlines what's the outlet. And you can pretty much get it right. 60, 50, 60, no, not 50. You can pretty much get it right, exactly right 50 to 60% of the time, and largely right 80 to 90% of the time. Like you can guess the specific outlet. So the reason for that is it's because these are ecosystems that prop up, that artificially bolster confidence in certain conclusions and then push those conclusions out. But that's how our minds are wired. That's what we want to do. We want that. Makes us feel good.
That is the thing, right? It's H.L. Mencken. We're getting what we want good and hard.
Yeah.
And when I think about, you say, okay, so we have this transition taking place, to stay on the TikTok of it all for a minute, because it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
We're being absorbed by this conversation about Jimmy Kimmel, whose job is like a kind of laughingstock anachronism, where he's hosting this show on a network that no one watches. I mean, it's not no one, it's millions of people, but the share of total viewership is now tiny.
Tiny. And social media, someone said to me, one of my jiu-jitsu buddies said to me the other day, there are no big actors anymore. Like, name some big actors, and I named her. He's like, yeah, that's a remnant of, now it's like all social media, it's all little influencers. And I think about, I just want to discharge this because it's in my head. You know what I love doing? I love just like having someone interrogate what I believe. I find that to be joyful. Like that's one of the ways I've been thinking about where I get joy from in my life. And beside my kids, that's really the last form. It's just like, how do we tell people, hey, it's really cool to have your beliefs, like really to try to figure out what's wrong about them. Like you can gamify it, you can think about it into this like truth rubric. I would love to see if that catches on. Because again, I think you're talking about like the TikTok thing, you're talking about ways that our mind is not, we have not evolved for social media. Like we evolved to survive, to throw spears at gazelles running across fields in the savannah 10,000 years ago, right? So how did we, how do we deal with what's next? Like, how do we face all of this when we know that we have these inbuilt cognitive biases? And the fact is, you have to want to overcome your cognitive, like when you said before about your reptilian brain, right? We all want to do that. But the fact of the matter is, we know that political violence is coming from one side. Now, someone's watching this and say, well, the Economist published a thing about right-wing. Well, if you look at that a little closely, that guy's an Antifa sympathizer or is actively Antifa. We can, I don't want to, hesitant to say too much to go down the rabbit hole. But the idea is, if you really want to figure out what's true, you have to be willing to take a good, honest look at the things that you believe. And social media, the algorithms for social media, the likes, etc., the dopamine hits, those are taking you away from reality, and they're artificially boosting your confidence in beliefs that may or may not have the warrant of the evidence. Does that make sense?
It does, right? I mean, and it's something that like we've all talked about quite a bit, and that probably the leading like sort of reasonable voice on this stuff is Jonathan Haidt, and
The Righteous Mind,
and the Coddling of the American Mind. I think the thing that's hard is that we are trapped in a game theory thing going on where that I don't know how. So let me take a step back for a sec.
Yeah.
One of the ways I think about government as someone who's very libertarian minded as it pertains to what government should do, which is to say really very little. But why? Why? Well, one reason why is because government is this ratchet effect style tool. And so whatever new architecture of incentives we could imagine being better, we have to then confront the reality that if it's going to be put into work by the government by force and by like, okay, let's pick a couple things, for example. Let's imagine that the government passed a law saying that no one under the age of 18 is allowed on social media. How do you enforce that? Well, that means you have to age verify every single person that gets on the internet. How do you enforce that? Well, that means you now have to acquire identity information, verifiable identity information for every single participant on the internet.
It ratchets up.
It's very instantly you're in a hellscape, and then you can say, well, I'm going to assume bad guys end up in charge of that, and that's real bad. The flip side we live in now, though, is that that's bad, and it's also already happening surreptitiously.
Yeah.
And so we have these forces that I don't feel well equipped to think about or to figure out how to navigate. That the tech side of things seems to be operating in ways that don't seem entirely in the interest of like healthy human family formation and psychology. But the government's not going to do a good job. And right now they're basically accelerationists fanning the flames of all that and saying, okay, hey, we'll broker deals so that we can make TikTok just a US propaganda machine instead of a Chinese one. That's a little better.
Yeah, I guess if you really were a libertarian to be consistent in that position, you'd have to say, well, you don't have to be on TikTok. There are other platforms or no platforms at all. Here's another. Here's another argument. If you're on the left and you're thinking about, oh, this is a great thing. Well, so say like Pornhub or what's that? OnlyFans. I've never been to OnlyFans. I probably should for research purposes. I actually never have been to OnlyFans, but
No. Yeah.
when like no, really I haven't.
No,
But when
I really haven't either. I've never visited the website. I don't think I
yeah.
have. Yeah,
So
no.
so when you go there and it collects data, it's collecting data about your sexual proclivities, particularly if you're gay. And the winds change or something happens, you don't want the government amassing that information. That would be my argument for people on the left for why it's a bad idea. But I do think there's an intrinsic ratcheting up. I would stick with my if you don't want people to watch a particular platform, build another platform. Or
Yeah.
people are just gonna watch. I just think that it's a very control oriented idea that we know it's best for you. It's very patronizing as well. People are just going to do what they're going to do, and I'm not even sure that you should necessarily ban. Everybody wants to ban content they don't like.
Mm-hmm. But I think it does beg the question if we've got. Okay, so there's this experiment that was done with rats in which if you gave them a dropper that they could lick that was laced with cocaine, they would starve themselves licking the dropper. Are you familiar with this?
I haven't heard that, but I know that there's one with bears.
And there's a great movie, Cocaine Bear.
Yeah. I wonder if that's where it comes from. Yeah.
But yeah, so as I understand it, this kind of using opioids to demonstrate sort of how addictive behavior can hijack a mammal like a rat and lead them to basically starve themselves to death in the lab environment. And as I understand it, so you think this is what's going on with social media. It's this dopamine addictive crazy thing, and it's basically sucking us into a vortex, and it's hijacked our system as a psychology. And the thing that is that pushes back against that is, I think in those lab cases, if you take the rats and put them in a natural environment, one that isn't this sterile lab, it doesn't replicate anymore. That actually touch grass is one of the solutions.
Okay.
Even for the rats with cocaine.
Yeah, there's so many problems that it's hard to even know where to begin. I mean, first of all, nobody says that about Doritos, right? Nobody says, well, we know there's a great documentary about Fritos. They were made to become addictive. You don't hear people talking about why we should make those illegal, and so people only want to make illegal the things that they, and that changes by decade. Whatever the moral fashion is of the decade, people want to make different things illegal based upon that. I just am extraordinarily skeptical that there should be some commissar somewhere in an office deciding what becomes illegal and what becomes not. And so the idea that you take someone outside, I mean, life is nasty, brutish, and short. What are you going to do? Like, even if I find it to be a fascinating notion. Like, you take somebody outside, and then what? Then what? I mean, there is no outside. The whole thing the whole street is artificial. The whole thing is artificial. The pollutants in the air, literally everything we've controlled. So there's no outside anymore. That's over. And even if there was an outside, like on Sentinel Island or something, like, what are you going to do? You're going to live in a mud hut without access to dental care? So, I mean, I just think that I'm significantly more laissez-faire, but I also realize that there are consequences to that, in which the society, it makes people sick overall. It makes people ill and not well. But I think that the main way to think about that is federal dollars. And bringing it back to what we talked about before, you can have academic freedom to publish anything you want, to post anything you want. You can compete in the marketplace of ideas, absolutely 100%. You're just not going to get any federal money. No one's going to prohibit your speech. Certainly the government should have absolutely no place in prohibiting one's speech, but just not going to give you any money.
I mean, it seems like the most reasonable position to occupy. It's the one I do. It's like I'm not, at no point am I saying we should have commissars or anything like that. I'm like a radical laissez-faire type. it's just in the face of the ratcheting up of the rhetoric and the echo chambers you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
There is something that's not just federal money going on. There is something like that's in our nature that is like unprepared to deal with this rate of change and this kind of ability. In some respects, you could say that we are either going to survive, we're either going to evolve to deal with this amount of freedom that we have, this freedom to sort of hyper narrowly choose our little echo chamber, or we're going to kill each other and it's all going to go off the rails. We have to find a way to get out of that trap.
Yeah, I think that the rate of technological progression will make this entire conversation obsolete in 2 years. But I do want to tell you a very quick story.
Please.
So Reed and I were sitting down I'm going to tell him the story, Reed, if that's okay. We were invited to a campfire where people sitting around a campfire. And there were two women who worked with each other at this office, doesn't matter where it is. So one of these women spontaneously started crying about Charlie Kirk. And I tried to console her. Reed was talking to the other woman, and the other woman was, how would you describe her? Not belligerent, but extremely dismissive. And then the woman who was sobbing about Charlie Kirk pointed to me and whispered, "She's a liberal. She's a liberal." And the woman literally got up and left and walked to the other side of the campfire because she hated Charlie Kirk. And she said some things immediately before that. And I told Reed, how on earth are we going to get over this? Like, these are two people who are friends. Everybody was chilling at the campfire. Everybody's drinking. We were having some wine. Everybody's having a good time. The thing that blew me away, John, about that is, like, she could have easily said, Charlie Kirk, I hate him. I hate everything he believes in. I think he's wrong. I think he's immoral. But I don't think he should have been murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the lowest bar.
Yeah.
And we can't even get people to agree that we don't murder our political opponents. That's the state we're in now. Now, here's the other thing that's crazy. I think about a guy like Charlie. Charlie and I had, Charlie and I were texting right before that. Charlie and I had significant differences, obviously. But here's the thing about Charlie. The tools that Charlie used are very similar to the tools that Reed and I use. Dialogue, discourse, less so debate. He used more debate. I don't really like debate as much because debate, you're kind of hunkered down into a position. But the idea is he used tools to go and to talk to people. He was against violence. He was against any kind of, he believed that reason and evidence and argument would win the day. So think about that. So if someone believes that, independently of the conclusions they come to, you have more in common with them than a person who has arrived at their conclusion as a result of a bad process. As a result of, oh, everybody in the society believes that, or my mom told me so, or I have these internal feeling states that lead me to the truth of this. No, the commonality that you have, all civilized people have, is dialogue, discourse, and debate. And the moment you veer from that, you start talking about authoritarianism, totalitarianism, police states, violence. So independent of what you think of Charlie Kirk's views, I have far more in common with a guy like Charlie Kirk because we believe in discourse and civility than I do. It's more important to believe in those things and to think that democratic processes and the polity can solve your issues as opposed to, ripping down statues or assaulting people you don't like.
I was having a conversation that reminds me of this. This woman saying she's a liberal about her friend,
Yeah.
And that's
I don't think
interesting.
that's the right word, by the way, but
No,
anyway.
and that's what I find interesting in thinking about this is, so we have these categories, left and right, and they go back to the French Revolution, and those on the right wanted to preserve essentially the status quo, the monarchy, the aristocracy, and those on the left wanted revolution. And it's easy to say, well, that's this sort of like anachronism that's held over, but there's a couple other things that feed into this um, this weird polarity. Like the fact that we still say left and right, the fact that conservative and versus, like, I'm grappling with like what do these things really mean today for real? Because it's not clear. Like, in one sense, you could say that like a liberal, like a classical liberal, like like that America is essentially a liberal country, that the Declaration of Independence, that Thomas Jefferson was super excited about the French Revolution. He was on the left in there. If Jefferson was in that chamber in France, he would be on the left. And yet today he is understood as being someone that's like the closest we had in our founders to probably like an anarcho-capitalist right winger. So there's these different. How do you think about this? How do you think about ways, and there can be more than one rubric, but how do
Yeah.
you think about what are the parts that are dividing us? Because I think
That's a
some of it's
great
political.
question.
Yeah, some of it's psychological. Some of it speaks to like the righteous mind and the different moral palettes and stuff. How do you think about that?
That's a great question. I'll answer the question directly after I say how I don't think about it. I don't think about it in terms of right left. I don't think about it in terms of conservative liberal. People don't even use those words. Liberal, they lump left and liberal together, which is a problem. Then there's classical liberal. In Australia, the liberals are really the conservatives. 25 years ago, like I see a lot of the stuff that J.D. Vance talks about, his famous speech in Munich. I see some of these things and I think, wow, like a Democrat could have given that 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been so. And then I always come back to the famous picture of Trump, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, and who was the other one? And someone posted
Elon?
the Democrats. Was it Elon? Yeah, the Democrats won the election. So I think that there's been a flip. So I don't think that those are good heuristics or good ways to even think about the problem. I think about the problem in terms of totalitarianism. Like, who's an authoritarian? Who's not an authoritarian? I am not an authoritarian. Many on the left are authoritarians. Many on the right are authoritarians too. But it does seem that the left is increasing their real estate in authoritarian propositions. Who's willing to have a conversation? Who's willing to have a dialogue? Who's delightful about the murder of their political opponents? Or what are the processes people use? Are the processes people use? What do they weaponize? Do they weaponize fear? Do they weaponize shame? Do they weaponize cancellation? And you mentioned the Jimmy Kimmel thing. Look, it's really hard to think about these people who have advocated for the cancellation of their ideological enemies for years, their comeuppance. It's hard to not be gleeful about the cancellation of a lot of these people. And if I were a better man, I would say I am not gleeful myself. But that being said, I don't think that they should be canceled. I gave a speech to that effect in London a few years ago. You can find it online. But the way to fight, look, you can tell how crazy someone is by how they act around crazy people. So if somebody's like literally like doing crazy shit, the way that you respond to that tells you more about yourself than about them. So the way I think about it is who's principled and who's not principled.
I'm thinking about that. Principled. The the biggest challenge I have with thinking about what kind of people should be in a school. as a teacher does principled work there, because you can have someone who's principled committed to the destruction of the very fundamental assumptions we're making.
Correct.
In fact, I've got this book up to my right here, Words That Wound, Critical Race Theory, Assaultive Speech, and the First Amendment. And it's a book of essays. You've probably seen it. Mari Matsuda, Charles Lawrence III, Richard Delgado, Kimberly Crenshaw.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects. This was part of, as I was trying to, dip my toes back into, where did this hate speech idea come from this week? They are explicit about what their project is. And their project is explicitly to burn down the Bill of Rights, the assumptions of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence.
Nobody's ever accused them of hiding what they believe. They've screamed it for the rooftops.
They're very explicit. They're against merit. They don't believe explicitly.
Merit is racist.
The notion of the rule of law or equality under the law, equal treatment under the law, immaterial of your identity. Like, okay, we're just going to adjust the facts and have an impartial judge. They reject that. It's part of this critical legal doctrine. So,
look,
what do we do with that?
Well,
because they won the Academy. It's like they're basically.
They did win the Academy.
Isn't that a fifth column on the Society? I mean, we did used to expel communists.
Fifth columns are usually hidden. No, they did.
True.
They did win the Society, and I guess so. There's so many themes here. Let's try to slow down on this. So when you say principled, the question
Aren't they principled? I guess is the simple question.
Yes, and one can be principled about the wrong things. That's why the most important thing in any conversation is epistemology, is how you know what you think you know. Your epistemology should always precede everything. And the problem is that we have a society that has that ass backward. So the way that we come to our moral conclusions in particular is we have these impulses, and then we look to our landscape and we latch on to the landscape. We write off competing evidence as anomalous or what have you. The same way we find our news sources, and we want to justify the things that we already believe. So we have a group of people, and far from a renegade, they'd be like cardinals in the madrasa, and to mix religions. Sorry about that. So you have people who are leading the charge. Our institutions are ideologically captured. Again, it gets back to the point of what do you want to do about it? But most people, I think we have to be honest and say, most people are just trying to get through the day. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to, they don't have time to think about the corruption in the peer-reviewed journal process. Like, they just don't have time to do it. But I'll tell you, when they will have time to do it, when 70% of papers in economics can't be replicated, when 65%, 70% of papers in psychology can't be replicated and they go for treatment, or we're trying to look at, we're trying to figure out President Trump's tariffs and we're trying to look for the best available information. But I think that the honest part of the conversation is people don't want to change. They don't want our institutions to change. And I think that they're gonna see what happens. Look. Let me give you a simple example. If you don't buy anything I just said, both Democrats and Republicans. This is, for the most part, this is caused by an equal share. Have gone crazy printing money. They have thought at some level that we can print our way into prosperity. This is utterly insane. This is a train wreck waiting to happen. It is absolutely inevitable. I think Charlie Kirk a while ago put out a tweet that said, democracy will win, or no, Western values will win. Nothing can stop us. And I quote tweeted and I said, insolvency will. I think all of these other problems could be solved. I'm thinking again in the back of my mind about your son. All of these, and my kids too, all of these other problems could be solved if we've been fiscally responsible. And I had high hopes in Trump. I had high hopes for Doge. But the big, beautiful bill and the $3 trillion in debt, our debt spending is now the third, about to be the third budget item. It's the fourth. It's paying the interest on the debt. So I'm saying this to you only because people just don't have the time in their day to think about printing money, the peer-reviewed system, ideological corruption. They're just trying to get through the day, man. They're just trying to pay the bills. They're just trying to figure out their health problems. I'm looking at my CPAP over there. They're trying to figure out whatever it is they're trying to figure out. And so, we got to cut people some slack. And I think that's why we need to create the kind of society we want to see. So we have, this is the fact, John. The society's been beholden by small, nasty, petty people. I don't speak much about it, but they literally ran me out of my job. They physically surrounded me twice in Portland and told me they were going to kill me. I can't prove they were Antifa. They didn't have the garb on. They were unmasked twice. Once they cornered me and they told me they were going to kill me. Literally. And so that was like the final thing. That and my $5,000 tax bill that I got. But my point is that we have been dealing with some very nasty people, and the way to respond to those nasty people is not by being nasty or crazy. The way to respond to those people, and I mean, you think I'm sounding like a Christian, is just to just say, listen, mistakes were made. Or when Malcolm Gladwell comes out and he says he made a mistake, hey man, thanks for saying that. I appreciate you did that. Let's move on now. Or when someone, so the way to respond to the people who have been truly relentless at harassing the fucking shit out of me for years, literally filing false allegations against me, weaponizing the system, almost trapping me behind a dumpster and telling me they're going to literally kill me and cut me up. The way to deal with those people is not to take a flamethrower to them. To take a flamethrower to our institutions, that's a very good thing, but not to individuals and not to violence. The way to deal with these people so that they see the model that they have, so they have something to aspire to, is to forgive them and tell them everything's fine. Mistakes were made. It's interesting. I just want to say, since I'm thinking about this, now that these universities are starting to slash their DEI programs, you know how they're not serious? Beside the fact that they keep people in, the same people, and they move them around and change their titles. You know how they're not serious?
How?
You know why? I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't take these people seriously. They're pathological liars. Because if they were serious, they would say the following. Look, we made a mistake. We were beholden to a dangerous ideology and orthodoxy. We're sorry. We're going to do every single thing in our future to make sure this does not happen again. Here are some things that we're going to do. You don't even have to say we're going to do. We made a mistake. We're sorry. I suppose if they say we hurt people, that would open them up to lawsuits. But we made a mistake. We latched ourselves onto a moral fashion. Have you heard a single institution do that? No, they have not done that. You haven't heard corporations do that. You haven't heard. Nobody has done that. Nobody can admit they've made a mistake and they were hoodwinked by a deranged ideology, particularly because, in all fairness, it was so insane and so stupid that it is a moral embarrassment to admit at any stage that you admitted that you believed any of it and that you actively worked to make the lives of people miserable who ask you simple questions about the ideology. Just questions, not even challenges, questions. So the way to deal with these people on an institutional level is to defund all of them. And then they can make their parallel institutions, they can make their DEI, they can sit in a basement and write all they want about white people and gassing white people and killing Jews. Great. You do that. You don't get a dime of federal money. And that's the way to deal with the institutions. And then the way to deal with the people is to forgive them and move forward.
I couldn't possibly agree more with the program that you just described. If I think about what, on the Friday of Charlie's death, I do these videos every Friday where I just sort of talk to the camera and try to make sense of the world as best I can.
I love them. They're great, by the way.
Oh, I appreciate it. I think, half the time I'm like, well, it's funny because for those watching who have been around here, on this channel, a huge conversation goes into these things.
Mm.
And the reason why they're edited up the way they are and not just like a live stream of thought is because it actually takes time to talk through your thinking. Every Thursday, like me and Nolan sitting off to my left and Tim, who's on the team, who you've met, we will sit and be like, what is true about this? Like even this week with the Kimmel, so our Greg Lukianoff and the team at Fire, they came out guns blazing against. He is great. He is great. I'm a big fan. We're friends. He's been on the show.
Friends, yeah.
We're all in this sort of like we're in our own echo chamber probably, but so be it. It's the nature of the human experience.
Yeah.
It is the case that the chairman of the FCC went on Benny Johnson and basically did some mobster-esque jawboning about, hey, you can either take care of Kimmel. I think the words were we could do this the easy way or the hard way. I mean, it's very coercive language. It's also the case, though, and this is where it's like you're trying to think through this. Like, so my first reaction is like, well, this is government coercion. This is like the emails that the FBI was sending Twitter. And it is. But then it's also the case, like, well, how do we actually know that the causal chain works the way we're assuming it does? Two things could be true at the same time. It can be true that the FCC commissioner should shut his mouth and abide by our Constitution and not do that. And also that Jimmy Kimmel was going to probably get fired anyway because the ratings suck, nobody watches, and most of the broadcast affiliates that are in the center of the country are like, we've had enough of this, and our advertisers are wanting to pull their money. And And so we like and like if you think about interrogating, you said this about epistemology. How do I know with confidence that the thing that my pattern recognition is latching on to, like, government intrusion on speech bad, this, therefore that, off to the races I go, I'm advocating. How do we know?
Great question.
How do we know that we're right? Because I wasn't in the boardroom at Nexstar to know whether or not they had a conversation saying, we're going to get dinged by the FCC unless we take action here, versus being like, this is gross. We've had enough. This guy was wishing that the unvaccinated would die during COVID. He's a horrible person. We've had enough. This is enough. How many more tragedies does this guy have to be like a monster on broadcast television for? And I think that just takes time and thought. How do you think about that? How do you think about the point at which you like, how do you reflect on your own sense of cause and effect and motivation with these problems, the way we're talking about them?
That's a great question. It's a wonderful question. I've thought about questions like this for the last written, published, studied them. I think the first thing is you have to be okay with not knowing and being uncertain. So we were not in the room. We don't really know what happened. I think the next question you have to ask yourself is, how do we weigh all the variables? I mean, it's just basic thinking. So there are two elements to thinking. There's a skill set and an attitude. And the older I get, the more I become completely convinced that the important thing is the attitude. You have to have certain dispositions that lead you to look at facts in as objective a manner as you can, to be willing to change your mind, to be trustful of reason, all of these dispositions. I want to say something that I was thinking about. I was really disappointed that Elon Musk, this is related to what you're saying, tweeted out a list of someone is putting together a list of professors who are, in the orbit of critical social justice who have brainwashed kids. And it's basically, to me, and Elon Musk tweeted out, it was like a list of abortion doctors. It's basically saying, look, these people are horrible people, do what you will. I could be completely wrong about this, and I hope I never, ever, ever find out. But if Jimmy Kimmel were assassinated, I don't think you would see near the glee and exuberance on the right as you do on the left with Charlie Kirk.
Well, I mean, I think as a matter of, like, to come back to that poll we talked about early in the conversation, I think there's an empirical basis to believe that that's the case. that you're right. That, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
think that's right. I can't know it. It seems
okay,
right.
I can't know. I hope I don't know it. But here's the rub.
It's
Here's the rub. Anybody listening to that will say that guy is on the right. There is such a rot and a corrosion among the left from identity politics that anybody who points out obvious facts about the world or hypothesizes about the world is all of a sudden on the right. Everybody is on the right. Everybody's on the right. Everybody to these people is on the right. So how do we deal with broken minds, broken people, broken institutions, massive deficits, people not having conversations with each other, gleeful people who are gleeful at murder, AI that is threatening careers and jobs, particularly of young people, geopolitical instability with Ukraine. I mean, we have so many problems right now. I do not think those problems, with the possible exception of the debt, I do not think any of those problems are insurmountable. But what I do think is we are going to have, and when I say we, I'm very specifically talking about the people on the left. We are going to those people are going to have to be willing to come to the table, or they are going to really realize, not on an individual basis in terms of a lone gunman, but they're going to realize what it looks like to be a society that's in deep, deep trouble.
well.
They're going to realize, yeah, go ahead.
No, finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
This what you laid out reminds me of something that is like a slightly hyperbolic thought, but that I want to put forward to be taken seriously and maybe and beaten down. Has the left, and by the left I mean those who believe in revolutionary change as the path to a better world. That would be my trying to create a definition that's neutral, or even that's a steelman definition. If you're on the left, you believe in revolutionary change towards a better world, what you think is going to be a better world. Are we at a point in the evolution of our society where the left, as it currently exists in all of its forms, by and large, serves no healthy purpose? And an analogy I think is useful here in this case is this. As I understand it, there's been work done. Autoimmune diseases are this weird thing that we don't fully understand. It's like this whole category that's always like, well, it's your body's attacking itself. We don't exactly know why. It's environmental, it's genetic, we don't know why. One antidote to a bunch of autoimmune diseases has turned out to be the reintroduction of worms into the body. Johns Hopkins has done work on this.
Yeah, especially now, Crohn's disease. Yeah.
Crohn's, alopecia, allergies, a whole bunch of stuff. In fact, and there's been studies of regions like Sardinia that was late to deworm, and they don't have the
cleanliness hypothesis. Yeah.
And so the premise there, biologically, as I understand it, is that we co-evolved with these parasitic elements in our body, and that our immune system response is used to having them there and is attenuated to fighting them and keeping them at bay. And now that they're gone, now that we live in a clean world, you have this overactive shock troop force that's just like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I guess I'll attack your kidneys. I guess you'll attack your lymph system. And is that the left? Is the left an autoimmune disease from a prior time? Are there no more good revolutions to fight?
So those are two different questions. The first question is, if I remember correctly, what is it good for? Is it good for anything anymore?
Yeah.
And I would say, if you qualify the left as the identitarian left, I would say it's extraordinarily good for something. And by analogy, it's like the Flat Earth Society. So I had John Sargent, I think it's John Sargent, came into my class virtually and gave his best arguments for why the Earth was flat. And I'm not joking about this. I'm actually, so he genuinely believes the Earth is flat. And I had my students I taught them how to politely ask questions. I taught them how to ask defeasibility questions. How could your belief be false? How to tease out certain contradictions, inferences in those beliefs. So the skill set and the attitude. And I think that strengthened their philosophical thinking. I think it strengthened, it helped them understand why certain principles should be adhered to for epistemological and moral reasons. I think that the identitarian left has given us a great gift. And the gift that they've given us is thoughtful, sane, calm, rational people with a basic epistemological or philosophical tool set should be able to work through these ideas and analyze them. Now, in an ideal world, those people would also come to the table and we would converse, not necessarily debate, but converse. And that's the thing that's been with us in Socrates: dialogue, discourse. But we don't have that world. So we're left with those static, perhaps written arguments to look at those. And again, the only way to really make that work is you would need the left to kind of defend those ideas again. But they're unwilling to do that. They just put them out as these apodictic moral pronouncements. This is true. Believe this. You don't believe this. You're a racist. What is the Kafka trap that D'Angelo puts in? You're a racist. No, I'm not. That's proof of you're a racist. It's like what 12-year-old girls and boys do to themselves in the playground. It's so asinine. But yet, understanding such
I
a
know
simple
you are,
thing.
but what am I? That's what this
Yeah,
is.
I know.
It's as a philosophy. I know you are, but what am I as a philosophy?
Yeah. So there's no there, but what there is an opportunity to learn. This, the other thing that's fascinating, John. So this is what I've been thinking about. I'm just talking to Reed about this. The biggest, without any question whatsoever, it makes Tuskegee look like chump change. The biggest medical scandal by far in history is the trans stuff. How did a small group of renegades, not even renegades, that makes them too, that props up their status artificially. How did a small group of ideologues capture every major Western medical institution? The whole thing. Surgery, standards of care, WPATH. How did they do this? This is fascinating. But fascinating, we're not Mr. Spock here, right? I mean, fascinating is one thing, but we have to have learned from that so we don't let it happen again. I mean, people, young girls, as young as 12 years old, I was just at an event with Billboard Chris, are still getting double mastectomies for non-medical reasons. How is this?
Yeah.
So in the same way, so you say, what is the left or I prefer the identitarian left. What do they have to teach us? Well, how do they do this? Let's learn from this. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again. And if there's something right about it, if they're correct in any of their assertions, particularly their assertions as it bleeds into public policy, then they should be able to defend those assertions. If not, then let them lose at the ballot box. Right? I remember Kamala Harris is famous. I will reveal my policy positions after I've been elected.
It is funny because one of the let them lose at the ballot box. There's some real truth there in that for all of the hemming and hawing about hate speech, or even the excesses of the censorship industrial complex.
Yeah.
It is the case that Donald Trump, as flawed as he is,
Deeply
won
flawed.
re-election.
Yeah.
Look, they threw everything that they could at this guy. And not only did he win re-election, he won re-election with a majority of Latino men. I think Latino voters overall, but certainly Latino men. It was maybe close for women. A larger share of Black Americans than any Republican. I mean, so there is like reality reasserts itself one way or another. But I think to push back on the question, it sounds to me like what you're saying is most of what constitutes the left, instead of being a constructive force that has some good things to still bring to the table, is now basically a part of the threat environment that keeps us agile and vigilant.
Well, how would you know they had some good things to bring to the table if they don't come to the table and talk about them?
Well, that's the deepest problem. But I think the hard part is, I mean, in some way, maybe science that never has an end, right? I think of like Jonathan Rauch and like his definition of liberal science from that book, Kindly Inquisitors, which goes back to
Wonderful
the 90s.
book.
It's like it goes back to
Wonderful
the
book.
90s and it sounds so present. There's no final authority in a scientific pursuit. It's every win is always like contingent, because it's like the black swan. Like, okay, all swans are white until we discover a black swan, and it might take hundreds of years. Or, oh, the Big Bang is the start of the universe. That's going to be contingent until forever. Because everything that we think we know is always fundamentally has a certain contingency to it. But you do reach something like the speed of gravity given mass, and it's like, no, that's it. We're pretty confident on that, except that maybe at the level of a quark. And like the physics of our social world, or the rules of the road that do work, involve freedom of speech. They involve a maximum degree of personal autonomy, and a desire and institutions that try to keep violence at an absolute minimum. Those seem like the things.
Pretty minimum, yeah,
right?
Pretty
You're
minimum,
never gonna have zero.
Pretty
You're never
minimum
gonna have zero
requirement. Yeah.
But,
so I'll tell you something I've been thinking about lately. Oh, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you aren't for those things in 2025, after the 20th century's experiments in catastrophe.
Yeah, just look at New York, who's probably going to be the mayor.
I'm not advocating that we change, that we have to defend these things forever. But you're no longer legitimate. Let me put it a different way. You don't have to go that far back in American history to be in a world where there were liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats, where the conservative Democrat was actually more conservative than the liberal Republican.
Yes.
And that, I think, was an outcome of a bigger shared values system. So all of those people, the liberal Republican, the conservative Democrat, the liberal...
I'm thinking of Gary Johnson from New Mexico and Al Gore. Gary Johnson later, he was a liberal Republican, later became a libertarian. Al Gore, super conservative Democrat. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Al Gore of the late 90s today would be called a Nazi. But you go back there and you say, well, how was that? How were we like that? And I think it's because that was sort of, like politics at the 249-yard lines or the 240-yard lines or something. The field, the rules of the game, everybody except for like weirdos in academia that were on the fringe and ignored, rightly, we're like, no, we're all Americans. We're part of the American project. We're all on board.
No more.
And that's the worry.
No more.
If we're not that, we're not even, what are we now?
Okay. So I'll tell you something I've been thinking about. And Reed has helped me think through this. David Deutsch has helped me think through this. Brett Hall has helped me think through this. Anytime that you talk to someone about a moral value or a metaphysical belief, particularly a moral value, like talking about a religious belief, anytime you talk to someone about that, you're usually presenting another moral value that runs in contradiction to the moral value they have, and you're asking them to adopt that moral value. Abortion, life begins at conception, doesn't matter what it is. Immigration, giving people a better life, committing crimes, taking jobs from people, it's irrelevant what it is. The thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and I hope this answers your question, if it doesn't, let me know, is how do you present something to somebody neutrally? Like the Delgados, the Kimberly Crenshaws, the people on the right, the Victor Davis Hansons. How do you present something to somebody neutrally, the Ben Shapiros, the Destinies, the David Pacmans, where every single person would be like, yeah, we want that. The Islamic extremist, even, I know that's a big load. Mandamis, here's the answer that I have to that question. Error correction. Do not block the road of inquiry. Error correction. Allow a method, some kind of system to take place that pulls out errors. That is an independent, neutral framing of the question that you don't have to smuggle in, to use your word from before, surreptitiously. You don't have to smuggle in any values covertly. Do not block the means of error correction and set up systems that enable us to catch. That's what it means to be rational. Set up systems that allow us to catch and make clear our errors. Going back to the Jonathan Rauch system and his latest book, The Constitution of Knowledge. But I think thinking about that in terms of we're all Americans, we're all humans, what do we all have in common? Well, we all want to eliminate errors from the system. We don't want to make mistakes. We don't want our institutions to enshrine mistaken notions. If I think we move toward that, what that means is different. But if you could just, as an ideal, get everyone to agree to that, to aspire toward that ambition, then I think that the problems would rectify themselves of people being gleeful at other people's murders. I think that that's an epistemological kind of metastructure that would obviate the need or the desire to come down with a cudgel or a sledgehammer on moral differences. That's my current view.
And we talked about this to some extent when you were here in Austin. I think the part that the impasse, and this isn't the postmodern identity politics crowd saying, no, we're not playing that game. So if what you're laying out to me is a field of play with rules.
Yeah.
And they are Rauschian rules. They're liberal in the classical American constitutional sense, rules. And the postmodernists say, no, there is no truth. So this notion of error correction is as orthogonal to it, because what are you talking about, error correction?
All right, hold on. They're not saying there is no truth. They're saying that truth is mediated through power structures. Truth is mediated through race, indigeneity, class, that used to be almost exclusively class. So they're not saying that, I can walk it, maybe a very few of them, the fringe of the fringe of the fringe. But even the mainstream applied postmodernists, the average, none of these people are denying the world. They're not denying the truth. They're just saying that we come to understand the world through these power structures. Even those people would want error. Even those people, for example, to use the analogy of a bank, those people would be, what was Popper's idea? Everybody is a falsificationist in something in their own area of specialty. Like even when they go to the bank, they want methods of error correction. Those little things they used to have when we were kids. You brought in the coins and they count the coins and they put them in the little bags and then they give you. Even the postmodernists want to know that the financial system, when they deal with their money, that there's some way to pick out the errors, because they want to know that when they deposit $10 in the bank, it's not only showing up as $9. So even for them, they should buy into this. Everybody should buy into the idea that we want a system that preserves the method of error correction. The communists should want it. Everybody should want it.
It's not clear that's true. I mean,
Let me throw this out to you as a parallel. We're just going to have a heart attack over there. Let me throw this out to your parallel. Okay. No, go ahead. You go.
Well, I was just going to say, ahead. I think the idea that power, or that you have this sort of claim to an authority that's essentially almost metaphysical, like, I'm a person of color, therefore that like by divine right of Foucault, I have a certain type of power.
A view of the world. You have a view of the world that those people who don't possess that identity characteristic do not have. So they have more access and more knowledge and can more accurately depict the world because of an immutable identity variable.
Yeah, it's like I can understand the assertions of this worldview. I mean, the reason to talk about it right now at this moment is that when we were talking about this one, last week, just on the phone, that The backdrop for Charlie Kirk's assassination is the assertion that speech is violence.
Right.
Because if speech is violence, then you can use violence against speech. And it sure seems like the people that constructed the philosophy of speech as violence wanted to justify violence against speech. That wasn't just isn't this an interesting outcome? That was the end that was intended from the start.
The necessary end, I would argue.
Right. And this is where their Marxian roots and this notion that the issue is never the issue is always the revolution. James Lindsay was on your fellow traveler. We were talking about this stuff. We will have to talk about this stuff forever, as much as it feels like we're repeating ourselves. But that does seem like it is not an agreeing to error correction. It seems like it is a category of its own. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm not being precise in my thinking.
No. I mean, so is the claim that if somebody possesses a certain immutable identity characteristic, that they cannot be wrong?
Is that the claim they make? Is that how you understand the claim?
If that's the claim, that part of the problem with people not talking to you is you have to get everything through reading. And so I'm thinking about the stuff I've read. So if that's the case, all you would need to do is find two people with the same identity characteristic, two people who are quote unquote oppressed, and if they have a difference of opinion, how does one adjudicate that?
Well, the
whole ideology devolves into nonsense.
Well, this seems to be the thing, right? So what you have is you have this idea that gets expressed as my truth, which is a ridiculous. No. What do you mean my truth? My experience, my feeling, my truth. Now you're playing word games, but let's take it seriously. That when they say my truth, my lived experience is my truth. That they mean that's true, like literally, like, well, there's a reality to your experience, only you have it. It is not transferable, or there's limits to the transferability of it. There's limits to empathy. I actually accept all of that. I think that's all correct. I can't perfectly know what it's like to be Peter Boghossian, not perfectly. That works for the individual. So then you say, then there's something shared about some other characteristic, like being a man, being a woman, which of course is immediately invalidated by trans in the way they talk about that. Like immediately, it's instantly like broken. But it seems like the trap that they think they solve with intersectionality, but that ends up slicing them into atoms is, okay, Claudine Gay was a silver spoon rich kid, not from the inner city, that didn't experience oppression. And actually, most of the people in higher ed as students are relatively privileged kids. They're not the same people. They don't have the same experience. Like the Black kids of a family of two doctors on the Upper West Side who then gets into Columbia has a fundamentally different lived experience than my buddy Eric, who was an orphan in Atlanta and then lived and only avoided ending up in prison because he was a nerd. And so he liked drawing cartoons and he ended up being an animator at Nickelodeon. But he was being constantly told he's a nerd and picked on and smashed by all the kids that cared more about sneakers. And we know this.
But we don't need to know the atomic experiences, the discrete experiences of people, or the experiences of a class of people. We just need to know there are people. We just, look, nobody wants dental pain is the best example in the world. I mean, truly, I use that example because it's such a relatable example. Dental pain is worse than testicle pain. It's the worst conceivable pain that one can suffer. Maybe I've never had a gallstone, but I know that when I'm in dental pain. So there is something about somebody's suffering. There is something. We all have these we all the feeling of happiness, the joy, the sadness. We cry when people die, unless you're a complete psychopath. So there are base commonalities that humans share. And when we share these characteristics, we can make certain inferences. Well, I don't like dental pain. Do you think they like dental pain? They don't like dental pain. Now, so we can build a kind of a architectonic structure or even a superstructure around the idea that there are shared commonalities, and we want to increase the people's flourishing and decrease their misery and suffering. Nobody wants to be immiserated. And I say that as a universal statement. But if somebody really does want to be immiserated, they're more than welcome to immiserate themselves. Or they're more than likely to, take the path, not make the choices, but take the path that leads them there. But anyway, my point is, I think that if we start thinking about things in terms of how do we fix the mistakes in our thinking, how do we fix the mistakes in our systems, and why should we want to do that? I think that will, even that should persuade all but the most hardcore of postmodernists. But if it doesn't, here's my response to you, John. There have to be some moral minimums that we have as a civil society in which we do not allow people present in that society a seat at the adult table. We do not allow the Taliban a seat at the United Nations Human Rights Commission for Women. We just do not do that. We do not allow large numbers of people who are antithetical to the basic civilizational values of the society into the country, to use your term again, who want to be a fifth column and overthrow and destroy. You have to have, it's Popper's paradox of tolerance. You have to have a moral minimum to say, this is the minimum that we expect in our institutions. We do not gloat when our political opponents are murdered. If you want to gloat in private, you're certainly welcome to do that. But in a classroom setting, a K through 12 setting in particular, we don't. There are certain sets of decorum. Like when you debate at Oxford, you do not go up in sweatpants. This does not. Look, and if you want to say, at this point, I'm just so sick of everybody's a Nazi and a conservative. If you want to say that's a conservative value, under Thomas Sowell's idea to conserve the civilization, I'll give it to you. Great. It is a minimally conservative value to not want to live in a large cesspool of people who are actively attempting to destroy the civilization and who have taken over our institutions and run our media outlets and conspicuously and consistently lie to people about what they're doing. Yeah, okay, I'm a conservative. Great.
We've come in a way back to the hardest part. I know how to argue. This is the part that makes me so uncomfortable as someone that really relishes in ideological coherence, to be perfectly honest. It's why do I like to talk about all this stuff? I like that. It's exciting to figure out how to poke holes in it and then to try to be as pure as possible. I have an ideological purity or orientation. What you're describing, one way you could manifest that would be to say something like this, in practical terms. And this has precedent in the United States. All right, if you profess to believe in a political program that is explicitly forbade by our Constitution, like, say, socialism, communism, you don't get
something anti-democratic.
Yeah. You don't get to run for office. You're excluded. You can stand on the street corner in Manhattan and talk about that all day long, but you actually are not allowed to run because it's not actually a right, or at least it's not a right to run technically. We actually have age limits and naturalization limits for our different offices, like president. You can't be foreign born and become president. These are guardrails that are not really liberal in a sense, and they're not, but we have them. You could make an argument, for example, along a similar line. I'll throw one else out to you.
I think I disagree, but I do disagree. But go ahead, give me a second argument.
I'll give you one other one that I'll make a case for that's illiberal, that my gut is like, I would be for that, but it's illiberal. So I admit it. There's a bunch of different things that point to executive function for human beings not being mature until around the age of 26. The best of which...
Yeah, I disagree. I hear that. I've never seen the data for that, but go ahead.
Well, I'll give you the best example, my favorite example that most people never talk about. And that is that the insurance company actuaries at rental car companies have determined that it's not actuarially sound to rent a car to someone younger than 25 or 26. Because you're just not responsible enough to go to Hertz and rent.
That could be, and I don't know, but it could be that you haven't been driving long enough, so you don't have the driving experience, as opposed to your brain functions not being fully developed.
Fair enough. That's a good response. But let's imagine that through a bunch of different things, it's like we've got multiple things that point towards 26. One could say we shouldn't let anyone under 26 vote. Like, that's crazy. If voting's important, why would we let people that are underdeveloped do it? We have age limits for it. Maybe we should raise it. This is just, I'm bringing up a couple examples of constraints here on the current order that point towards the kind of like paradox of tolerance you're talking about. Just to get your reaction to them. I'm not saying I even necessarily want to advocate for this. I'm just curious.
So I disagree, and I'll tell you why. That's why we have a constitution. We have a constitution because if this guy Mandami wants to he wants to do some pretty crazy stuff. But if you actually look at his platforms, they're different from his things that he said historically, like defunding the police. He has this deranged supermarket idea to make a new supermarket ecosystem. And we know exactly what the results of that are going to be. I think that the people should be, in a democracy, you have to let people take accountability and ownership for their voting decisions. And I think if the people of New York City want to vote themselves into a horrifically economic situation, I think they should have every right to, if they want to. Now, it gets a little tricky because he wants to tax, white neighborhoods. But if he says he wants to tax billionaires, if he says he wants to, and the people vote for this, that's what it is to live in a democracy. So that's what you get. But that's why we have a constitution, to have constitutionally protected mandates. Like, I don't think you can place a tax on white. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, obviously, but so that's why we have a constitution. But I have one huge caveat for that. People can vote for any destructive, deranged policy they want, but they get no federal bailout. So after this lunatic destroys the city, sorry, you voted for it. Sorry. But you have to take responsibility for your actions. That is a way to make people more and not less responsible for their voting decisions.
I wonder if, you've pointed to this several times in this conversation, and I think you're hinting at something. Well, you're saying it explicitly, but that some of our cultural derangement is fundamentally a kind of luxury good that we've been able to entertain and subsidize because of our wealth and status as a society, including our reserve currency status and ability to print the world's trading dollar. We have a dollarized global economy. So when the Fed prints money, it doesn't have the kind of immediate effects that it seems like it will. We still manage to be able to issue new debt right now, even though it is obviously impossibly unsustainable, but we're the tallest pygmy on earth when it comes to that. So we still get to do it, and people will buy it because it's like, well, where else am I going to put my money? The Japanese yen, they're at 250% of GDP. Europe is a basket case and basically a mausoleum being turned into an Islamo-fascist state. And you can't trust the Chinese government, so the renminbi or the yuan is not going to be a thing.
It's not pegged, it's not traded. That's why, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's not trustworthy enough. Like, at the end of the day, people do kind of trust the dollar. I mean, even Milei gets into Argentina and he wants to dollarize. So as far as bad as the dollar is, it's bad. It's like democracy. It's the worst system except for all the others. Do you think that that's actually really maybe the most fundamental structural thing happening for America?
Oh, the currency?
Not,
or what?
The currency writ large. Adam Smith said there's a lot of ruin in a nation. And I think what he meant is there's a lot of surplus that you can draw down on before everything collapses. And is that what it is? Is that why we've entertained and allowed and sort of subsidized so much self-destructive craziness? It's like, well, we're doing fine.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing
no,
fine. We can still, we can still issue treasury bills. We're fine.
Yeah, it's funny. I just, 3-4 nights ago, I just did an event with Rob Henderson of Luxury Beats. He's writing a new book now about luxury beliefs. I do think that was a luxury belief, and I do think that we have basked in this crazy idea that everything's going to be fine for long enough. But I'm telling you, in no uncertain terms, when the dollar collapses, here's what people are going to say: we had no idea this would happen. Nobody told us. We had no idea. Now, they won't explicitly say that printing large amounts of money would lead to you can't tax a country into prosperity, but you also can't print a country into prosperity. I just think that it is a kind of luxury belief. And I really think that if people so you're asking, where are they going to put their money? Well, maybe they'll put their money in Bitcoin. Maybe they'll put their money in, I have my money. I'll tell you where I have my money. I have one asset, but I have my money in Tesla. Reed's a big Tesla. He drives a Cybertruck. Reed's a big fan of Tesla as well. I bought it at 426, and today it was 425. So I'm hoping that but because what you want to do is you want to outpace inflation, right? And so what you also want to do is, I just had that conversation today. We just had that conversation. So we spent a lot of time abroad dealing with these larger scale issues, doing street epistemology, et cetera, abroad. But those days are going to come to an immediate end when the dollar crashes, right? Already in Hungary, we just spent 2 months in Hungary. It went from, when I was there in 2020, I go there every couple of months, every year for a couple of months. I love it there. It's my happy place. And people online are always outraged at me for going to Hungary. But it was, at one point, it was 400 to 1. Now it's like 330 to 1. I mean, you can see the fall. The euro has gone up. I mean, there have to be consequences. We just printed $3 trillion. There have to be consequences to this. So I think that the best way to deal with this is to just be honest about the nature of the problem, the same thing it is with anything else. We have printed money. We're going to take responsibility for this. And we're throwing the economy into a big sewer.
How cyclical do you think our troubles are? Because there's something. One of the things that, as I've gotten older, I feel like I'm more sensitive to is that problems are super complicated. They're super complex. And there's all these different forces at work at the same time in this synergistic feedback loop. Our culture, our family structure, the culture as in expectations. So the Protestant work ethic and where that goes. The sense in which, when you go back to sort of these change moments, or when you go back to the New Deal, and you look at the fact that they had to construct Social Security in a fundamentally fraudulent way, they had to lie about what it is in order to get it to pass. And what I mean by that, for those that don't understand what I'm saying, is that right from the start, the notion that there was an account that you were contributing to that was your retirement money, that was yours as a kind of property, was false. And the reason it was false, and you knew it was false from the outset, is as soon as the program started, it began to pay benefits to people who had never contributed to it. So you knew right away. And my great-grandfather said, "We're going to collapse." My dad tells me this story. "We're going to collapse. I didn't contribute to this. It's a Ponzi scheme." And he said that partly as an Italian, and Ponzi was an Italian. So it is quite literally a Ponzi scheme. But I don't bring that up to bash Social Security directly. That's a secondary consequence. I bring that up because we were a more fiscally sound people as a culture at the time. You couldn't do it. There was too much of a pushback. There was the shared cultural understanding. The majority of the country wouldn't get behind a dole. And even when you fast forward to 1965 and the Great Society and Lyndon Johnson and the speeches, when you go back and read his speeches about the Great Society, he is very strongly pushing back on any notion that what they're putting forward is a dole or any kind of attempt to pay people not to work. We still, the thing I fear and I think I hope for, I fear that our problems, this cycle of problems that are crashing on us now, are crashing on a fundamentally worse people than before. In a lot of dimensions, like we're worse. In some senses, we're better, but in some very important senses, we're worse. We're worse psychologically. We're worse in terms of our understanding of economic reality. We're worse in terms of our patience and our time preferences and our ability to wait. We're worse. We're worse in terms of our family structure and the amount of intact families we have. There's a bunch of stuff.
Can I throw you a curveball on that?
Please.
Isn't that a good thing, though?
That we're worse?
Isn't that a kind of, yeah. I mean, that we're worse and that we're going to deal with this tragedy and tremendous adversity, that we cause this. There's a kind of perfection to that. Now, the older I get, the more I see that we have to face the consequences of what we have done. And when the dollar collapses, and when all of these institutions that we have, no one trusts their institutions anymore, but yet the institutions keep pumping out madness. So I would argue to you, just as a curveball, that all of the things that you've described, and I kept trying to think, oh, geez, how could I show that that's wrong or that's not correct? But I think it is correct. I mean, even if you look at old exams from different high schools of what they learned in math and English, I mean, it was unbelievable. That's, even way before the self-esteem movement took everything down. Another misguided educational directive.
Yeah.
No child left behind. Okay. I would argue to you that it's probably better that we're worse off now so that we can feel the consequences more intensely. Because we have to realize we have done this to ourselves. And now we will bear the price. It's perfect to me. It's a kind of beauty to it. It is a kind of beauty.
It's as we come towards the end, I that reminds me of the thing I ruminate on more now, which you can make fun of a little bit, and that's okay. And that is, I think about the improbability of Christianity's success.
All right, I thought you were going to say that. Yeah.
I telegraphed a little. And what I mean by that, and I talked about it last Friday, as a sign of hope, as a notion that, like, because when you hear that, we're worse people and now we'll get our comeuppance, and there's a cosmic justice to it. It still sucks.
And not even a cosmic justice, but a kind of, that doesn't even need to be cosmic. It's totally naturalistic.
Right, it's causal. It's the reality asserts itself, and that you can't escape it, and that will it'll be cleansing. Deal with it. It's cleansing.
So
it's a very it's sort of the Austrian economics.
It'll make you a better person.
Carnegie Mellon, if I remember this correctly, under is it Carnegie Mellon? The Treasury Secretary under Calvin Coolidge gets who was there actually through 3 presidencies. I think it was Carnegie Mellon. If I'm misremembering that, I'm embarrassed about it. Basically said, liquidate labor, liquidate capital, like in the face of the booms and busts. It's like you have to let the rot. I think it literally said, like, let the rottenness be purged of the system. Andrew Mellon. That's what it is. Thank you, Nolan. I was half right. Andrew Mellon. That's probably coming now.
So I correct me if this is a bad way of thinking about it, but if somebody smokes packs of cigarettes every day, and they get lung cancer, there's a kind of perfection there. If someone sits around, is indolent, they just lay on their couch and they eat Doritos and Twinkies all day, there's a kind of perfection in there when they get diabetes and they go blind and they can't walk because they can't feel their feet. So just don't be surprised by any of it. Don't be surprised at the consequence of the of the fall of the dollar, of loss of fiat currency. Don't be surprised at any of these things. Just say, listen, I didn't have time. I was too busy working, whatever. And, most people, maybe they don't even think like that. Just a quick story. So I remember I was doing an intervention at I got a grant to do a Socratic intervention on diabetes patients. And my hypothesis was that if they underwent brief Socratic treatment, they would be more likely to, desist from overeating or whatever. This is way before Ozempic and the classes of drugs. And so I did a little basic kind of asking people basic questions about things, et cetera. And one woman said the most interesting story, and there's a psychiatrist in the room at the time. And the story was she's losing her eyesight due to diabetes. And she has trouble walking. She was morbidly obese. And the thing that bothers her is that she's a single mother and she has 2 young kids. But and when she said, I love Snickers. I just love Snickers. I love them. And my buddy, who was a psychiatrist, said to me, because I'm thinking about this from a rational paradigm, a rational framework. We give her these tools. She enables herself. She stops eating the Snickers. She can be with her kids for longer. They'll have a mom. They won't have to go to an orphanage or what have you. He said, she's not thinking about any of that stuff. She's thinking, Snickers good, yum, yum, Snickers good, yum, yum, Snickers. That's exactly what it did to me. But I also think that there's a kind of perfection to that as well. I would like to think, I've been doing this not because of a callous indifference, but because it really is a genuine compassion. I do believe in the Aufklärung, the project of reason to enhance and liberate, etc. I genuinely believe in that. And I also think that for those who live certain lifestyles or eschew reason or disable the method of error correction, then there are consequences to your behavior. If you're going to sit and smoke or whatever, if you're going to print money like you're going crazy, if you're going to let people indoctrinate your kids or let in people who want to destroy and rip down the whole of Western civilization, there are consequences to that. So when those consequences hit you, deal with it like a man. Yeah, I smoked cigarettes like Hitchens. He dealt with it like a man when he had lung cancer. I don't regret it at all. That's how you should deal with it. Yeah, we let these people in. They had names. They destroyed the whole society. They turned it parallel courts to rear courts. Yep, we did it. We own it. Own it. Own it. Don't run from it. Fucking own it. Own your smoking. Own your behavior. Own what you do to your institutions. Don't run from it. Own it. That's adulthood.
I can't think of a better place to put a period on our conversation than that, Peter Boghossian.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
We could go on for hours more, but a call to responsibility, even at the biggest level, I can get behind that, however callous it might be. So thanks for coming back on Dad Saves America, my friend.
My pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for your friendship. And I'll see you when I'm in Austin in about a month.
Sounds great, brother.
All right. Thanks, John.